Hello everyone, welcome to Diplomatic Briefing. On October 14th, China's Ministry of Commerce released several announcements. The spokesperson for the Ministry of Commerce responded to reporters' questions regarding the recent U.S. announcement of additional tariffs and other restrictive measures against China. The second announcement was about the decision to take countermeasures against 5 U.S.-related subsidiaries of Hanwha Ocean Comfort Association. The spokesperson also answered reporters' questions regarding the countermeasures taken against these 5 American subsidiaries of Hanwha Ocean Comfort Association. The last press release was the Ministry of Commerce spokesperson responding to reporters' questions about the U.S. implementing Section 301 investigation restrictions on China's shipbuilding and other industries. Many netizens have noticed a particular phrase in the statement: "We will accompany to the end, but the door for talks remains open." Why has this sparked so much discussion among netizens? Have you noticed that recently, when the Chinese side mentions these two phrases, most of the time talks comes before accompany to the end in the statement? In other words, the door for talks is open and we will accompany to the end. After the new media platform Yuyuan Tantian under CCTV sorted through this year's responses from the spokesperson of the Ministry of Commerce, they found that regarding the order of the principal stance of fight and talk since May this year, the Ministry of Commerce has made 4 statements. In these, they first mentioned, "We will accompany to the end in a fight," and then said, "The door for talks is open." 2 of these statements were in May, right on the eve of the first round of China-US talks, and then in October, both responses on the second followed the same order. Why mention fight before talk? If the previous 2 times were statements made on the eve of negotiations, and this time the Ministry of Commerce once again puts fight before talk, the wording seems to suggest an increased, even maximum pressure on the US. The goal is not to back out, but to force Trump to the negotiating table to discuss all the issues that China is concerned about, rather than just focusing on resolving TikTok as in the previous round. The main demand is for the US to revoke all recent measures targeting China. And it's not just about negotiating over American soybeans. The latest move in China's countermeasure package has been described as killing 2 birds with 1 stone. October 14th is the date when the US imposes increased port fees on Chinese ships, and it's also the day China begins charging port fees to American vessels. On the same day, China further escalated by announcing countermeasures against 5 US-related subsidiaries of Hanwha Ocean, prohibiting them from operating in China. Organizations and individuals within China are also prohibited from engaging in related transactions or cooperative activities with them. Additionally, China announced the launch of an investigation into the impact on the security and development interests of the shipping, shipbuilding, and related industry supply chains. Based on the findings of this investigation, further measures will be introduced as needed. Following the announcement, Hanwha Ocean's stock price dropped by more than 8%. China's swift, forceful countermeasures quickly drew attention from foreign media, especially Korean media. So what exactly did Hanwha Ocean do? China already made this clear in its statement. A spokesperson for the Chinese Ministry of Commerce said the U.S. began implementing final measures of its Section 301 investigation into China's maritime logistics and shipbuilding sectors, which seriously violates international norms and basic principles of international relations, severely harming legitimate rights and interests of Chinese enterprises. Hanwha Ocean and its affiliated companies in the United States assisted and supported the U.S. government's related investigative activities, which harm China's own sovereignty, security, and development interests. For some time now, South Korea has played a crucial role in supporting the United States under the Trump administration's plan to make American shipbuilding great again. The U.S. has long been struggling with the decline of its shipbuilding industry. Currently, the U.S. accounts for less than 1% of global commercial shipbuilding, which is far lower than China's approximately 60%, while South Korea ranks second with 22%. Jang Seong, director of the Trade Policy Bureau at the Ministry of Trade, Industry and Energy of South Korea, said. Back in January, it was revealed that during tariff negotiations, the Trump administration hoped South Korea would join the U.S. in jointly suppressing China in fields such as shipbuilding. The Financial Times mentioned that China's announcement of sanctions against Hanwha Group came at a time when China-US trade tensions were once again escalating. According to statistics from the Center for Strategic and International Studies, CSIS, South Korea's shipbuilding accounts for more than 29% of the global market. As part of the US-Korea trade negotiations, South Korea has already committed to the US to invest $150 billion in the shipbuilding industry. Yonhap News Agency placed the news about China's sanctions on Hanwha Ocean in the most prominent position on its website, describing the sparks flying from the China-US conflict and how South Korea is caught in the crossfire. The Chosun Ilbo describes South Korea as a shrimp being swept up in the clash between the two giants, China and the US. The sanctioned entities will be prohibited from conducting any transactions with Chinese organizations or individuals. Korean media analysis pointed out that the policy targeting Hanwha Group is different from imposing general tariffs. Instead, it directly targets specific private enterprises, which has a huge impact. Port-related measures such as imposing fees between countries affect the entire shipping industry, whereas the sanctions against Hanwha may directly hit individual companies. However, regardless of which foreign media outlet, they all mentioned Hanwha Group's close ties with the United States, including providing capital, orders, and technology. Hanwha Ocean, this shipbuilding giant, is precisely a key part of the U.S. plan to revitalize its shipbuilding industry. The Hanwha Philadelphia shipyard, which was included in the sanctions list this time, was acquired by Hanwha Group at the end of last year for $100 million. This shipyard is seen as a symbolic project of Korea-US shipbuilding cooperation, and some even consider it part of the plan to make American shipbuilding great again. According to ABC, Hanwha Ocean has already signed contracts with the U.S. Navy. The contract provides maintenance, repair, and overhaul services for U.S. Navy vessels, supporting the Trump administration's efforts to restore global competitiveness in shipbuilding. In stark contrast, Hanwha Ocean announced this May that it would withdraw from its joint venture in China. In December last year, Hanwha Group acquired the Philadelphia shipyard and took on an order from the U.S. Maritime Administration to build 5 national security multi-mission vessels. On August 26th, Hanwha Group held a ceremony at their shipyard. At the naming ceremony for the first main-class ship, they also announced an investment plan for the United States, stating that they would use the U.S.-Korea Leaders Summit as an opportunity to inject an additional $5 billion into the Philadelphia shipyard. At the ceremony, South Korean President Lee Jae-myung also remarked that just as Korean companies and workers once created the miracle of Korean shipbuilding, now Korea and the United States must join hands to make the miracle of making American shipbuilding great again a reality. Hanwha Group Vice Chairman Kim Dong-kwan also took the opportunity to state that Hanwha Group will become a reliable partner in revitalizing the U.S. shipbuilding industry. The Korea JoongAng Daily quoted Professor Ju Jae-woo of Hyunhee University as saying that China's inclusion of Hanwha's Philadelphia shipyard on its sanctions list can be seen as a dual blow and a coordinated measure. It not only restrains Trump's plan to revive the shipbuilding industry, but also targets Hanwha's use of Chinese rare resources. Zhao Kun, vice president of the consulting firm for several defense products at the Associated Press, said that China is sending a signal that it will target third-country companies that help the United States weaken China's maritime dominance. A ship brokerage company headquartered in Athens stated in a report that this kind of tit-for-tat reciprocal restriction between China and the U.S. has plunged both countries into a spiral of maritime tariffs. This could potentially affect global shipping routes. A consultant who provides trade advice to American companies regarding China believes that the new policy may not cause significant disruption to the industry, and any increase in costs could likely be absorbed by raising prices. He said, "What can we do? Shipping has already stopped, and trade with the US is already quite chaotic. Big companies are always thinking of ways to cope, aren't they?" On the 14th, the website of China's Ministry of Commerce released a statement quoting the ministry's spokesperson regarding the U.S. actions toward China's shipbuilding industry. Now, regarding the implementation of the investigation and restrictive measures in response to reporters' questions, the spokesperson said that the U.S. measures are a typical example of unilateralism and protectionism, which seriously violate WTO rules and go against the principle of equal protection in the China-U.S. Maritime Agreement. These actions grant unfair competitive advantages to shipping and shipbuilding companies in the relevant countries, constitute discriminatory practices against China's shipping and shipbuilding industries, and seriously harm the interests of China's related industries. The spokesperson emphasized that, in order to further safeguard the interests of China's related industries, the relevant Chinese authorities, in accordance with relevant regulations, have placed some companies that assist and support U.S. investigation activities on a countermeasure list and have launched investigations into actions by U.S. and certain other countries' companies that harm the security, development, and interests of China's shipping, shipbuilding, and related industries. During the course of the investigation, China will adhere to the principles of openness, fairness, and impartiality, carrying out law enforcement and investigations while fully safeguarding the rights of all stakeholders. China's position on the relevant issues is clear and consistent. We are prepared to respond to the end, but the door for dialogue remains open. China urges the U.S. to correct its erroneous practices and work together with China, resolving bilateral issues through equal dialogue and consultation. Comprehensive observation. First point. Korean media lamented that sparks from the China-US conflict have affected 4,000 Korean companies, saying that China targeting Hanwha Ocean has made Korea a shrimp caught in a fight between whales. I do not agree with this view from the Korean media. Korea is not a shrimp, especially since Hanwha Ocean's subsidiary has participated in and assisted the U.S. in sanctioning China, essentially trying to use the U.S. to strike at China as a commercial competitor. Therefore, they are not innocent contractors, but rather an active accomplice. Secondly, the Korean government is also not a shrimp, especially the previous Moon Jae-in administration, which actively proposed to help the U.S. build ships and jointly suppress China. Thirdly, will China's tough countermeasures against companies outside the U.S. cause concerns among foreign investors? In fact, what China is doing now is precisely to draw a red line, making it clear to multinational companies where China stands. Previously, China had already repeatedly warned that when negotiating tariffs with the United States, other economies must not sacrifice China's interests as a bargaining chip, or else China will definitely retaliate. The case of